The vast chamber of the Galactic Council on the planet Consensual Light gleamed under the cold blue illumination that had become synonymous with authority throughout the known galaxies. Massive crystalline pillars rose from the polished floor to the vaulted ceiling, creating an atmosphere of both awe and intimidation. The circular arrangement of seats divided into tiers, based on species classification, technological advancement, and duration of council membership, faced the central podium, where speakers addressed the assembly. Ambassador Elena Cruz of Earth stood at her preparation chamber, reviewing her notes one final time. Her dark hair was pulled back in a severe bun, emphasizing the determined set of her jaw and the intensity in her eyes. The blue diplomatic uniform of Earth's interstellar core fit her athletic frame perfectly, its simplicity a stark contrast to the ornate attire of many council representatives. "Are you certain about this course of action, Ambassador?" asked her aide, shifting nervously beside her. "The council has been our protection for over a century." Elena's fingers tightened around the crystal data drive containing her speech. "Protection. Is that what you call technological restrictions and colonial quotas?" She softened her tone, seeing the genuine concern in her aide's expression. "We've been preparing for this moment for 20 years. Humanity deserves better than perpetual junior status in a system that was never designed for our advancement." The chamber's announcement system pulsed with soft light, indicating her imminent introduction. Elena squared her shoulders and took a deep breath. The weight of 15 billion human lives across 27 star systems rested on her next actions. Presenting to the Galactic Council Assembly, Ambassador Elena Cruz of Terra, Sector 4, Category 3, Civilization, announced the synthetic voice using Earth's official designation rather than the name humans called their homeworld. Elena walked with measured steps toward the central podium, aware of the murmurs that followed her progress. Many species maintained polite diplomatic expressions, but she could sense their dismissive attitudes. Humans were still seen as newcomers, despite 150 years of council membership, impulsive, unpredictable, and in need of guidance. From the highest tier, High Counselor Zyrax of the Etherian Collective observed her approach with cold, compound eyes. The crystalline exoskeleton that encased his upper body refracted the blue light in mesmerizing patterns. As the most ancient among council races, Etherians held disproportionate influence over council policies. "Ambassador Cruz." He intoned his voice, translated and amplified throughout the chamber. "The council recognizes Earth's representative. You have requested this extraordinary session to address matters of galactic security and cooperation. You may proceed." Elena placed the crystal data drive into the podium's interface, but did not activate it immediately. Instead, she looked up, making deliberate eye contact with representatives from each tier. "Esteemed members of the Galactic Council," she began, her voice steady and clear. "For 150 years, humanity has been honored to take part in this grand coalition of sentient species. We have learned much from your ancient civilizations, contributed to joint scientific endeavors within our permitted parameters, and faithfully observed the hierarchical protocols established by the founding members." Several representatives nodded in approval, pleased by what seemed to be a customary expression of deference. "Today I stand before you not to request another review of Earth's classification status, nor to petition for expanded colonization rights." Here, she paused, activating the data drive. A holographic display appeared above the podium, showing the official seal of Earth's unified government. "I am here to formally announce humanity's withdrawal from the Galactic Treaty and the initiation of Operation Exodus." The chamber erupted in chaos. Translators struggled to keep pace with the outbursts in hundreds of languages. Representatives rose from their seats, gesticulating with appendages of every conceivable configuration. The Morcadian delegation released distress pheromones that caused neighboring species to recoil. High Counselor Zyrax struck his ceremonial staff against the floor 3 times, the sound reverberating through the chamber with artificial enhancement. "Order. The council will maintain order." As the commotion subsided, Counselor Malara of the Lumidian Harmony glided forward, her bioluminescent skin pulsing with agitation. Ambassador Cruz, surely you cannot be serious. No species has withdrawn from the Council in over 2,000 cycles. The protective measures the Council provides are no longer required by humanity. Elena interrupted, causing another wave of mutters at her breach of protocol. Effective immediately, all human research outposts, transport vessels, and colonies will begin a coordinated withdrawal from Council space. This is not a negotiation or a leveraging tactic. This is notification. The holographic display changed to show a detailed timeline of the withdrawal process, with phases clearly marked for different sectors. "This is madness," shouted a representative from the Vespid Confederation, his translucent wings vibrating in agitation. "Your species occupies crucial nodes in our defense network, maintains atmospheric processors on 12 shared worlds, and provides 30% of agricultural research for the Outer Rim." Elena nodded calmly. "We are aware of our contributions, Representative Markosh. Transition protocols have been established to ensure minimal disruption. Technical manuals and operational guidance will be provided to your specialists. However, human personnel and proprietary systems will be removed according to this schedule." High Counselor Zyrax's voice cut through the renewed uproar. "Ambassador Cruz, the Council cannot allow this unilateral action. The Treaty of Galactic Unification signed by your predecessors clearly outlines the procedures for protocol adjustments. If Earth has grievances, there are established channels." "With all due respect, High Counselor," Elena replied, "Earth is not seeking adjustments to existing protocols. We are exercising subsection 7.12 of the treaty, which, while rarely invoked, does provide for complete withdrawal given proper notification. This session constitutes that notification." She pressed another control on the podium, and the holographic display changed again, highlighting the relevant treaty section, with human and council signatures from a century and a half earlier. "You would abandon thousands of years of accumulated wisdom?" asked an elder representative of the Krith Dominion, his voice quavering with what might have been genuine concern. "Your species has thrived under Council guidance." "Has it?" Elena countered. "In 150 years, humanity has remained classified as a Category 3 civilization, despite meeting all technical criteria for Category 2 advancement. Our colonial expansion has been restricted to barren systems, while more established races continue to claim resource-rich worlds. Our scientists are required to submit innovations for Council approval, often waiting decades for permission to implement technologies we developed independently." She gestured to the assembled representatives. "Humanity is grateful for the knowledge shared with us, but we can no longer accept the limitations that come with it. We believe in our potential to chart our own course among the stars." The chamber fell into an uneasy silence. Many representatives exchanged glances, some in disbelief, others in calculation. "You have no idea what awaits you beyond Council protection," warned Counselor Malara. "The threats we shield you from are many and significant," Elena acknowledged. "But humanity has always thrived on challenge and adaptation. We would rather face those threats as free agents than remain perpetual subordinates in a system that doesn't recognize our full potential." High Counselor Zyrax's compound eyes fixed on Elena with an intensity that would have unsettled her years earlier. "The Council will need to deliberate on this unprecedented situation. We request that implementation of your exodus be delayed by no less than 3 standard cycles to allow for proper transition planning." Elena shook her head. "I'm afraid that isn't possible, High Counselor. The first phase of withdrawal has already begun." As if on cue, her communicator displayed a notification. She read it, then addressed the Council once more. "I've just received confirmation that all human personnel have been evacuated from the Nexus Station in Sector 7. Control systems are transitioning to Council oversight as we speak." This announcement sent another shockwave through the Assembly. The Nexus Station was a crucial hub for interstellar communication and trade route coordination. "This is an outrage," bellowed the Taurian ambassador, his massive form rising to its full 3-meter height. "The Nexus requires specialized maintenance cycles, without proper handover. Complete technical documentation has been transmitted to station control," Elena replied evenly. "The systems will function for approximately 30 standard days without human interface. That should provide adequate time for your engineers to study the protocols." High Counselor Zyrax's voice had taken on a dangerous edge. "Ambassador Cruz, you are placing countless lives at risk with this reckless action. The Council cannot permit—" "The Council's permission is not required, High Counselor," Elena stated firmly. "Humanity entered this alliance voluntarily, and we withdraw under the same principle. Our decision is final." She removed the crystal data drive from the podium, symbolically ending her presentation. "This concludes Earth's formal notification. All further communications regarding transition procedures should be directed to our automated systems. I thank the Council for the courtesy of this audience." With that, Elena turned and walked toward the chamber exit, ignoring the eruption of voices behind her. She maintained her composed pace until the massive doors closed behind her, then leaned against the corridor wall, exhaling slowly. "It's done," she whispered to herself before activating her secure communicator. "Phase 1 complete. Initiate Phase 2. Throughout Council space, the effects of humanity's withdrawal began to manifest with alarming speed. On Verdantia, an agricultural world jointly settled by humans and 3 other species, Dr. Li Wei directed her team in the final harvest of specialized crops developed in Earth laboratories. "We cannot simply abandon these fields," protested her Florian colleague, his leaf-like appendages trembling in distress. "The outer rim depends on these yields." Dr. Li gently placed a seedling container in his hands. "These are genetically stable specimens that will continue to produce for at least 5 growth cycles. The documentation we're leaving explains the cultivation requirements. Your people are excellent botanists. You'll adapt the procedures. But the climate control systems will continue functioning," she assured him. "We're not disabling infrastructure, merely withdrawing our direct involvement." Across the planet, similar scenes played out as human agricultural specialists prepared for departure. Transport vessels descended through the atmosphere loading equipment and personnel, while leaving behind carefully prepared instructional materials. Meanwhile, at the Helios defense perimeter, Commander Rayner supervised the disconnection of human-designed targeting systems from the massive orbital defense platform. "This is insanity," muttered the Vespid security officer Markosh, watching as human technicians systematically removed components. 3 pirate factions operate in this sector. Without these defense arrays, the basic deterrent capabilities will remain functional," Rayner explained, passing him a datapad. "These are the access codes for the primary systems. Your engineers can maintain the standard protocols, but the predictive targeting algorithms are proprietary technology." Markosh's compound eyes narrowed. "You speak of proprietary rights, while leaving an entire sector vulnerable. I thought humans valued life." "We do," Rayner replied, "which is why we're not disabling the system entirely. But we also value our independence and the right to determine how our innovations are used." He hesitated, then added more quietly, "For too long, the Council has benefited from human ingenuity while restricting our advancement. That arrangement has reached its end." Similar scenes unfolded across hundreds of installations throughout Council space. Human engineers, scientists, security personnel, and administrators methodically disengaged from their posts, leaving behind basic operational guidelines, but removing specialized equipment and expertise. In the Council chamber on consensual light, emergency sessions convened as reports flooded in from affected regions. High Counselor Zyrax presided over increasingly frantic deliberations. The Nexus Station's communication relays are operating at 60% capacity and declining, reported a technical advisor. Human interface systems were more deeply integrated than our records indicated. "What about the atmospheric processors on Nevos Prime?" demanded Counselor Malera. Functional, but deteriorating, came the response. Human maintenance protocols used adaptive algorithms that our engineers are struggling to replicate. High Counselor Zyrax's crystalline exoskeleton emitted a low-frequency vibration, indicating extreme displeasure. This withdrawal is more damaging than anticipated. How did we become so dependent on a Category 3 civilization? Counselor Thrix of the Quantum Collective, normally reserved in council proceedings, activated his speaking priority. Perhaps that classification was our first mistake. Human technological innovation has always outpaced their assigned category. We restricted their advancement while simultaneously integrating their solutions into our infrastructure. Are you suggesting the humans were right to abandon their commitments? Demanded a Taurian representative. I am suggesting, Thrix replied carefully, that our current crisis might have been avoided had we recognized their actual capabilities rather than maintaining an outdated hierarchy. The debate grew more heated as additional reports arrived, each detailing new complications from the human withdrawal. Agricultural projections showed imminent shortages in 4 sectors. Transportation networks reported increasing delays as human-designed navigation systems operated without specialized maintenance. Even the council chamber's environmental systems began experiencing fluctuations, their human designers having departed with the first wave. We must establish contact with the human leadership, declared Counselor Malera, after 3 days of deteriorating conditions. This situation cannot continue. High Counselor Zyrax, who had opposed any concession, finally relented. Prepare a communication to Ambassador Cruz. We are willing to discuss adjustments to their status within the council framework. The message was transmitted along all known channels, but the automated response remained unchanged. Earth and associated human settlements have withdrawn from the Galactic Council as per Treaty subsection 7.12. Transition documentation has been provided for all affected systems. No additional assistance is available. As the first week of the withdrawal concluded, the crisis deepened. On Nexus Station, critical communication relays began failing sequentially as automated maintenance routines reached their programmed limits. Without the specialized knowledge of human technicians, council engineers struggled to interpret the complex interdependencies of systems designed with human intuitive logic. Chief Engineer Kalthos slammed his manipulator appendage against a control panel in frustration. These human systems make no rational sense. Why would they design redundancies that follow different operational principles, rather than duplicating the primary function? His assistant, reviewing the limited documentation left behind, offered hesitantly, "The notes suggest it's a design philosophy called diverse redundancy, apparently to ensure that whatever causes one system to fail is unlikely to affect the backup in the same way." "Inefficient and unnecessarily complex," muttered Kalthos, even as he struggled to restore functionality to the primary communication array. Throughout council space, similar scenarios unfolded. Systems designed or maintained by humans began to degrade in ways that confounded even the most advanced council races. What became increasingly apparent was not merely dependence on human technology, but on human thinking, the unpredictable innovative approaches that had been simultaneously dismissed as primitive while being integrated into critical infrastructure. On Verdantia, the agricultural crisis accelerated as the specialized crops left behind by Dr. Li Wei's team began showing signs of stress without the precise cultivation techniques human botanists had developed. The documentation explains the water cycling requirements, insisted a Florian botanist, but the plants are still showing degradation. His colleague studying the withering fields replied in frustration, "The humans didn't just follow procedures, they constantly adjusted based on observation. Their notes mention intuitive adjustments that aren't quantified in the protocols." By the 10th day, the council convened yet another emergency session, this time with a significantly altered tone. "Our situation is becoming untenable," acknowledged High Counselor Zyrax, his normally authoritative voice subdued. 17 critical systems have reported major failures. The Outer Rim colonial worlds are reporting severe shortages, and 3 defense perimeters have detected increased pirate activity near their compromised sectors. Counselor Malara's bioluminescence had dimmed noticeably in the past days. We must consider more substantial concessions to entice human cooperation. Their automated responses reject all communication attempts. Perhaps, suggested Counselor Thrix, our approach has been fundamentally flawed. We continue to frame this as a negotiation to bring humans back under Council authority when they have clearly demonstrated they will no longer accept subordinate status. A murmur of discontent ran through the chamber at this suggestion, but fewer voices rose in outright rejection than might have been expected days earlier. "What alternative would you propose?" asked High Counselor Zyrax. "A delegation," replied Thrix. "Not to negotiate terms of return, but to request assistance as equals, seeking cooperation rather than compliance." The notion would have been unthinkable before the crisis, but desperation had begun to erode even the most entrenched council hierarchies. After brief but intense debate, a delegation was assembled including specialists in the systems most critically affected by the human withdrawal. Their destination was a space station at the edge of what had once been council-administered space, but now marked the boundary of independent human territory. Named Free Haven, the station had been constructed secretly over decades, a fact that shocked many council members when its existence was revealed through the withdrawal announcements. The council delegation's ship approached the massive station with a mixture of trepidation and wounded pride. Unlike the elegant crystalline architectural style favored by senior council races, Free Haven exhibited a pragmatic modular design that prioritized function over form. Multiple docking bays accommodated vessels of various configurations, and the station's rotating habitat rings generated gravity through centrifugal force, rather than the gravitic field generators preferred by advanced council worlds. "Primitive but effective," murmured the Etherian representative, as their ship received automated docking instructions. Markosh, the Vespid security officer, who had confronted Commander Rayner during the defense perimeter withdrawal, had been included in the delegation for his previous interactions with human security protocols. "Do not mistake practical design for technological limitation," he warned. "I have learned that human innovation often takes unexpected forms." The delegation was met in the docking bay by a small reception committee led by a tall human male, who introduced himself as Technical Director Aiden Cho. "Welcome to Free Haven," he greeted them with formal courtesy. "You've had a long journey. Would you prefer to rest before discussions begin?" The delegation leader, a senior Lumidian diplomat, tried to mask her surprise at this consideration. Council protocol would have dictated immediate proceedings, regardless of physical comfort. "That won't be necessary. Our mission is urgent." Aiden nodded. "Then please follow me to the conference facilities." As they traversed the station corridors, the delegation observed human society functioning independently of council oversight for the first time. The diversity was striking. Humans of various ethnicities and physical types moved purposefully through the station alongside a surprising number of non-human species, who appeared to be operating as equals rather than subordinates. "Those are Terrellian traders," whispered one council representative, in shock, pointing discreetly to a group conversing animatedly with human colleagues. "Their civilization is classified as Category 4. How are they engaging in direct negotiation without council mediation?" The conference room they were led to was spacious and well-appointed, though lacking the ceremonial grandeur of council chambers. Instead of hierarchical seating, a circular table dominated the space with identical chairs arranged around it. "Please be seated wherever you prefer," Aiden instructed, gesturing to the table. "Ambassador Cruz will join us shortly." The delegation members exchanged uncertain glances before selecting seats, uncomfortable with the implied equality of the arrangement. They had barely settled when the door opened again to admit Elena Cruz. She had abandoned the formal diplomatic uniform of Earth's Interstellar Corps for a simpler outfit of dark gray, unadorned by insignia or rank indicators. Her hair, previously constrained in a severe bun, now fell in loose waves to her shoulders. The transformation was subtle but significant. She no longer presented herself as a supplicant to council authority, but as the representative of an independent power. Esteemed delegates, she greeted them, taking a seat at the table. I understand you've come seeking dialogue. This represents a significant shift from our last interaction. The Lumidian diplomat straightened her posture. Ambassador Cruz, the Council has authorized us to discuss terms for technical assistance with critical systems affected by your withdrawal. Elena's expression remained impassive. I see. And what does the Council offer in exchange for this assistance? We are prepared to review Earth's classification status, the diplomat continued. An accelerated evaluation for Category 2 designation could be arranged with corresponding adjustments to colonial quotas and technology restrictions. A faint smile touched Elena's lips. The same concessions humanity has requested for the past 50 years, now offered because you find yourselves unable to maintain the systems we helped build. She shook her head. That's no longer sufficient. Markosh leaned forward, his translator projecting his agitation. People are suffering, Ambassador. Agricultural systems are failing on multiple worlds. Defense networks are vulnerable. Is this the legacy humanity wishes to create, remembered as the species that abandoned their responsibilities? Responsibilities. Elena countered, her calm demeanor finally showing cracks. Or exploitations. Humanity provided solutions that benefited all council worlds, only to be continuously restricted from advancing our own civilization. We were permitted to contribute, but not to grow. She tapped a control on the table, activating a holographic display, showing statistics on technology transfer applications submitted by Earth over the previous century and the corresponding rejection rates. 93% of human innovations were classified as potentially destabilizing to established hierarchies and restricted from implementation even within our own colonies, she explained. Yet, 78% of those same innovations were gradually adapted into council infrastructure, often without attribution or compensation. The delegation shifted uncomfortably, unable to dispute the documented evidence. What would you have the council do? Asked the Etherian representative. Abandon thousands of years of established protocols. If those protocols no longer serve the needs of all members, yes, Elena replied simply. The crisis you're experiencing isn't just about technical systems failing. It's about the failure of a philosophy that values stability over innovation, hierarchy over cooperation. She leaned forward, her gaze intense. Humanity doesn't wish to see suffering prolonged. We're prepared to provide technical assistance, but not as subordinates returning to an unchanged system. If the Council truly wishes for human cooperation, it must be on new terms as equals in a partnership, rather than as managed assets in a hierarchy. With another tap on the control panel, she displayed a new holographic document. This is the comprehensive cooperation proposal that Earth's leadership has authorized me to present. It outlines a fundamentally different relationship between humanity and Council Worlds 1, based on mutual respect, equitable exchange, and shared advancement. The delegation spent hours reviewing the proposal, occasionally erupting in protests at particularly revolutionary concepts. The document called for the elimination of civilization categories, open technology exchange protocols, and collaborative rather than hierarchical decision-making structures for interspecies projects. This would undermine the very foundation of council authority, objected the Etherian representative. It would transform that authority from control to coordination, Elena corrected. The council could still serve as a forum for interspecies cooperation, but without the artificial constraints that have limited the contributions of newer members. As the delegation prepared to depart with the proposal for full council consideration, Markosh lingered behind, approaching Elena privately. Even if the council accepts these terms, he said, his translator conveying genuine concern, The transition would be chaotic. Too many systems are already in critical condition. Elena nodded. We anticipated this concern. That's why Technical Director Cho has assembled emergency response teams, ready to deploy to the most critical locations contingent on the Council's provisional acceptance of our core principles. Markosh's compound eyes registered surprise. You prepared for the Council to relent? We prepared for all scenarios, Elena replied. Humanity didn't choose separation as our preferred outcome, only as the necessary catalyst for change. Within days, the first human technical teams were deploying to critical infrastructure throughout former Council space, under a provisional agreement. The terms were unprecedented. Human specialists would restore and stabilize essential systems, while Council restrictions on human technology were temporarily suspended to facilitate repairs. On Nexus Station, Aiden Cho led a team of human engineers who immediately began addressing the failing communication relays. Rather than simply repairing the existing systems, they implemented long-proposed upgrades that had previously been rejected by Council technology review boards. This adaptive routing architecture will prevent similar failures in the future, Aiden explained to Chief Engineer Kalthos, who watched with reluctant fascination as the humans worked. It's designed to learn from disruption patterns and automatically reconfigure. Such autonomous systems were deemed too unpredictable for critical infrastructure. Kalthos noted, repeating the standard Council position. Aiden paused his work to look directly at the alien engineer. And yet predictable systems failed in predictable ways when routine maintenance was withdrawn. Sometimes, adaptability provides more stability than rigid control. Similar scenes unfolded across Council space, as human specialists returned not as subordinates, but as partners bringing long-suppressed innovations. On Verdantia, Dr. Li Wei directed recovery efforts for the failing agricultural systems, introducing cultivation techniques that had been developed on Earth's independent colonies, but never approved for implementation in Council territories. These symbiotic microbial networks will strengthen the root systems naturally, she explained to the Florian botanists who had struggled to maintain the fields in her absence. They adapt to soil conditions rather than requiring soil to be artificially maintained in a narrow parameter range. Such biological engineering exceeds permitted Category 3 civilization parameters. Observed one Florian, then added with a rustle of leaves that indicated embarrassment. Though I suppose those restrictions are no longer relevant. Dr. Li smiled gently. The categories always created artificial boundaries around knowledge that shouldn't be divided. Your species has botanical insights that would benefit human agriculture tremendously, insights we couldn't fully access under the previous system. As the emergency interventions proved successful, negotiations between humanity and the Council intensified. The provisional agreement expanded to include more substantive reforms, though not without resistance from elder Council races, accustomed to their privileged positions. High Councillor Zyrax, who had initially been the most vociferous opponent of human demands, found himself increasingly isolated as practical necessities overwhelmed ideological objections. The effectiveness of human solutions once freed from arbitrary restrictions was undeniable, and younger Council races began openly advocating for the new cooperation model. 3 months after the initial withdrawal, a formal delegation from the Council arrived at Freehaven for the signing of what would be called the Equal Cooperation Accord, a revolutionary document that would replace the ancient Galactic Treaty with a new framework based on collaborative advancement rather than hierarchical control. The signing ceremony took place in Freehaven's Central Assembly Hall, a space large enough to accommodate representatives from all Council worlds, alongside human delegates from Earth and its colonies. Unlike the cold blue illumination of Council chambers, the hall was lit with warm, natural light that symbolized the transparency of the new relationship. Elena Cruz, still serving as humanity's primary representative, stood at the central podium before the assembled delegates. The journey from her confrontational announcement in the Council chamber to this moment of reconciliation had transformed not only interstellar relations, but Elena herself. The rigid diplomat had given way to a confident statesperson who had proven capable of both principled resistance and pragmatic compromise. Distinguished representatives. She began her voice, carrying clearly through the hall. Today marks not the end of a crisis, but the beginning of a new era of cooperation. The path that brought us here was difficult but necessary. Sometimes, systems must experience disruption before they can evolve. She gestured to the assembled delegates. The document before us today recognizes a fundamental truth, that the old treaty obscured that diversity of perspective is not merely to be tolerated, but celebrated as the engine of progress. No single species, no matter how ancient or advanced, possesses a complete understanding of the universe. It is in the combining of our unique viewpoints that we find the most innovative solutions. High Counselor Zyrax rose to speak next, his crystalline exoskeleton gleaming under the hall's illumination. Those who knew Etherian expressions well could detect subtle signs of discomfort in his posture. This was not an outcome he had envisioned or desired. Yet practical realities had prevailed over tradition. The Council acknowledges, he stated formally, that the hierarchical structures which served us for millennia have proven insufficient for the challenges of our current age. While this transition has not been without difficulty, we recognize the necessity of adaptation. He paused, then added with what might have been grudging respect. Humanity has demonstrated that innovation sometimes requires disruption of established patterns. The signing proceeded with representatives from each world affixing their acknowledgement to the accord according to their cultural traditions. Some pressed biometric appendages to the document. Others applied unique energy signatures or chemical markers. The human representatives, led by Elena, signed with an antique fountain pen, a deliberate callback to Earth's diplomatic history. As the ceremony concluded, Elena found herself approached by Markosh, who had played an increasingly significant role as mediator between human representatives and council traditionalists during the negotiations. "You knew this would be the outcome," he observed his translator, conveying a mixture of admiration and lingering resentment. The withdrawal was calculated to force the council into a position where cooperation on new terms was the only viable option. Elena considered his statement carefully before responding. "We knew it was a possible outcome, perhaps even the most likely one given sufficient pressure. The interdependencies between human innovation and council infrastructure had become too significant to sever without considerable mutual damage." "Yet you were willing to cause that damage to achieve your aims," Markosh noted. "We were willing to accept temporary disruption to create the possibility of genuine partnership," Elena corrected. The alternative was perpetual subordination in a system that stifled human potential, while simultaneously exploiting it. She paused, then added more softly, "The truly surprising element wasn't that the council eventually negotiated, it was how quickly the old hierarchies crumbled when actually challenged." Markosh's compound eyes studied her with new understanding. "Perhaps that is why such challenges were so vigorously discouraged in council doctrine, the fear that the system was more fragile than it appeared." "Systems maintained through control rather than consent often are," Elena replied. In the months that followed, the implementation of the Accord transformed interstellar relations throughout former council space. The rigid civilization categories were replaced with a more nuanced recognition of each species' unique contributions and capabilities. Technology exchange protocols emphasized collaborative development rather than centralized approval, leading to an unprecedented flowering of innovation as formerly restricted knowledge flowed freely between worlds. On Verdantia, the agricultural renaissance led by Dr. Li Wei expanded to include botanical techniques from a dozen worlds, creating sustainable cultivation systems, more resilient than anything previously achieved. The planet became a hub for interspecies agricultural cooperation, with specialists from across the galaxy coming to study the symbiotic approaches pioneered there. Nexus Station, under Aiden Cho's continued technical direction, evolved from a mere communication relay into a true innovation center, where engineers from multiple species collaborated on next-generation technologies. The adaptive systems initially implemented as emergency measures became the foundation for a new philosophy of infrastructure design that valued resilience through diversity rather than standardization. Even the defense perimeters, once rigidly controlled by Council security protocols, transformed into collaborative protection networks, where each participating world contributed according to their strengths. Human predictive targeting systems were integrated with Vespid early warning capabilities and Etherian shield technologies, creating defenses more effective than any single approach could achieve. Not all transitions were smooth. Centuries of hierarchical thinking could not be undone in months, and some elder council races continued to resist the new equality. Occasional conflicts erupted over resource allocation or development priorities that had previously been dictated from above, but now required consensus. Yet the overall trajectory was undeniable. The galaxy was moving toward a more equitable balance of influence, with innovation flourishing in the newly created spaces of cooperation. Human colonies freed from artificial constraints experienced a renaissance of development, while former council worlds discovered that partnership yielded more benefits than control ever had. 1 year after the signing of the Accord, Elena Cruz prepared for what would be her final official act as Earth's primary representative, before transitioning to a new role within the Cooperative Council that had replaced the old hierarchical structure. She stood once more in a preparation chamber, but this one overlooked the vast central plaza of New Consensus, the space station constructed to house the reformed interstellar governance body. Unlike the imposing, intimidating architecture of the former council chambers, New Consensus had been designed through collaborative effort, incorporating elements from all member species into a harmonious whole. The assembly hall featured natural light-living vegetation and accommodations for the physical and psychological comfort of all participants. "The delegation from the Outer Rim colonies has arrived, Ambassador," reported her aide. "This will complete the transition to full representation for all settled worlds." Elena nodded, feeling a profound sense of accomplishment. "Thank you. I'll be ready in a moment." She took a final look at her notes for the historic session that would formalize the complete implementation of the Accord. What had begun as a desperate gambit to force recognition of human potential had evolved into something far more significant, a fundamental restructuring of interstellar society toward greater equity and cooperation. As she prepared to enter the chamber, Elena reflected on the journey that had brought her and humanity to this moment. The withdrawal had been a calculated risk, leveraging interdependence to force change, but its success had exceeded even the most optimistic projections. What emerged wasn't merely better terms for humans, but a better system for all species involved. The chamber doors opened, revealing the circular arrangement of equal positions, where representatives from across the galaxy awaited the final ceremonial acts that would complete the transition. Among them sat High Counselor Zyrax, diminished in authority, but still respected for his ancient wisdom, alongside newer voices like Markosh, who had embraced the opportunities of the reform system. Elena stepped forward into the chamber, leaving behind the confrontational stance that had defined the beginning of this journey. The path ahead would have its own challenges, but they would be faced together, not as rulers and subjects, but as partners in the continuing exploration of their shared cosmos. Behind her, the doors closed on the old era of hierarchy and control. Before her lay a future of cooperation and innovation, built on the recognition that diverse perspectives, freely shared, created possibilities greater than any single vision could encompass. It was a lesson humanity had always understood, and now finally one the stars themselves would learn.